Hello, my name is Yoshi Bauer. Welcome to the My Special Needs Connection webinar and podcast series. As a parent of children with special needs and as a professional advocate, I understand the challenge of connecting parents and professionals with the information that they need to serve children and adults with special needs. At My Special Needs Connection, we empower parents and professionals through valuable instruction and insights of experts in the special needs community. We're excited to come alongside you to provide you with information that you need. Let's grow through the exchange of knowledge and the hope of success. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and YouTube channel for new releases. Please enjoy our webinars and podcasts.
Well, I want to welcome you all for attending this webinar through My Special Needs Connection. It's a webinar series offering information to parents and professionals in the community, everything from speech language to ABA, topics on autism, advocacy. And today we're very fortunate to have with us Amanda Lee. Amanda is the Center Director at Brain Balance of San Diego. Great to have you, Amanda. A little bit about her background. She has a background in education, STEM, and wildlife conservation. As a lifetime learner, she's a sponge for information and active in promoting equity and access to quality education. Previous workshops that she's given to the community include topics of dyslexia, defiance, distance learning, executive functioning, early childhood development, outdoor learning, and more. So we want to welcome you here today, Amanda.
Thank you.
And it's great to have you. The topic that we're going to be addressing, or Amanda's going to be addressing today, is called the ADHD child, creating structure and routine, brain breaks, and motivation. So I think this is going to be a great topic for the community. So Amanda, with that, if you could go ahead and get started, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. So I'd love to start by telling you all what exactly is attention. You know, this is one of the biggest challenges that a lot of our families and the community has, not only in San Diego, but abroad. At Brain Balance, we've served over 45,000 families, and over half of them have this struggle. So I just want you to know, attention is not just one thing, but it's many things and many pathways in the brain working together to be successful, to help people really function in their everyday life, whether it's in the classroom, at home, or in the community. So remember, attention is not one thing that you just focus and work on. It's many different parts of the brain. And what research has shown, particularly with Cambridge University, they've shown that brain connectivity involved with ADHD, cognition, learning, or brain connectivity is involved with ADHD, learning behaviors, and mental health. And so what we know and what our basis of our program is strengthen those areas of the brain, right? Strengthen those connections, not just the areas, because if we can get those connections stronger, we can improve their function and improve their focus.
Good. Okay. I assume that you work in the school system, work with kids that are in the school system. Yeah. And do you have any, recommendations for parents when it comes to children that maybe are having struggles in the school system and in the classroom because of attention and whatnot?
Yeah, and so when parents ask me, is this normal, or what can we do about it, or what's going on, it's really important for parents to know what the root of the challenge is. And so rather than just seeing that your child is being fidgety in class, or they're being impulsive, or they're daydreaming, whatever it may be, that's just the symptom, right, of the tip of the iceberg, I like to say. There's so much going on developmentally and again across the brain regions that is causing that to happen. And so an umbrella term, executive functioning, helps us get through our everyday lives. And so cognitive tasks like focus, memory, learning, comprehension, and reasoning, that is affected by executive functioning. Skills like inhibition, managing your emotions, self-motivation, problem solving, organization, right? And a lot of the kids, I imagine a lot of your kids who are the parents who are listening right now, your child probably struggles with executive functioning. And although a lot of that is based on the frontal lobe of the brain and they're still developing, they still need to be trained. And again, more importantly, you need those connections across the hubs of the brain to be connected. And so when you think of the brain, I like to think of it like a big highway. There's point A to point B. That's what you need to learn or to read or to listen or to write. And instead of your brain working efficiently, going the quickest route, a lot of times the kiddos that we see, and I'm sure your child too, it's not that they can't do the task, it's just that their brain might take a really roundabout scenic way, or they may get lost along the way, right? And so you can imagine when you are physically driving on the highway yourself, when things are smooth, everything's great, but when you get rerouted, when you get lost, when there's construction, it can get frustrating. And that's kind of what's going on with the kids that we see. What's happening, you have struggles with attention and focus. So that imbalance of the brain is something to look for, and some early indicators include struggling with learning or managing your emotions or making friends. Motor skills especially is a big one. Maybe have poor core strength or poor coordination. Other early indicators could include missing milestones in childhood or in infancy. Maybe mixed dominance. Your child can't decide which hand to use or which part of the body is best. And so these red flags usually help us know first what's going on, and in an assessment like ours, we help you really see the whole picture, and then we can start addressing it. And by again understanding the root challenge, then we can take those steps. So I have some tips for that if you're ready for it.
Sure. So it is a frontal lobe issue, right? The executive functioning is in the kind of the front part of the brain.
Yeah, it's the region that's responsible primarily for executive functioning. But remember, it's a lot about the connectivity between all the different regions. That's what's essential. And to help that develop and help that stimulate, a lot of it goes back to physical exercise and movement. Your different senses, all 5 senses, are essential to help you trigger those neurons in the brain. And so the biggest advice I have for families who have kids who are struggling with attention and focus is move your body, move their bodies, make sure they're getting those brain breaks and making sure that they're exercising. And from infancy onward, really incorporate that physical and sensory stimulation to develop the brain wholly.
Okay, so I take it then there is a way to remediate this issue.
Yeah,
right? It's not just.
Definitely.
I know some schools might accommodate a child with attention problems, for example, front row seating or extra test time or maybe a peer buddy, but there's actually a way to help remediate the problem rather than just accommodate the problem.
Exactly.
So, if you could get into that would be great. I mean, how?
Yeah, that's the meat of the presentation. What can you do about it, right?
Right.
So at home, again, movement matters. Use your muscles to engage your brain. In the morning, I think it's really important for kids to have a chance to run around and elevate their heart rate and get that blood pumping. It really helps set the mood for the day. And throughout the day, you can also have your brain breaks to reset and re-regulate yourselves and to be able to focus as well. For myself, even though I don't have time to work out, full workout, I always try to do something. Even if it's 5 minutes, it brings up your heart rate and again, gets you in a good path for the rest of the day. One of the other big things is counter screen time with movement. A lot of times you are stuck in front of the screen these days in school, especially with distance learning. But then there's outside of school too. There's TV, there's your iPad. Right now with the stay-at-home order, the opportunities to be active are limited, but you can still counter it. If your child wants to watch a 30-minute show, go around and run for minutes before and after, for instance. Or if you're going to do screen time, try to do it as a family as well. But that's something small you can do. But otherwise, nutrition also matters, right? What you put in your body really affects your brain and your mood and your functioning. And as part of our program, we also have a nutritional guidance program. We know that there's so much research on the gut-brain axis, and so I encourage you to look into that as well. Kids struggling with ADHD and attention tend to need more protein, and again, do a little bit more research, but make sure they're eating healthy, whole foods, not processed foods. Definitely eliminate added sugars. I know, I would say almost all of our parents, they see that immediate effect if their child has sugar. One thing I really emphasize too is adequate sleep. You know, we tend to get really busy in our lives and time gets away from us, but these kiddos, they need so much more sleep than adults. And kids with neurodevelopmental disorders and challenge with focus, and just they work so much harder than everyone else basically in their everyday lives, that they're going to need more sleep than the average child. So I always recommend parents putting together a bedtime routine as well as a wake up routine. We tend to put an alarm instance to wake up, but what about a go to bed alarm? Right? Start that process and make sure you get adequate healthy sleep, and turning off the screens hours before bedtime as well. And then a couple other things. You want to train your brain for those sustained non-reward driven activities as well. Oftentimes I hear parents say, well, they can play video games for hours, so I know they can focus. Yes, but there are different types of attention, different types of focus, and you can listen to one of my previous webinars to learn more about that. But if you can train the brain to do things like puzzles and board games or baking, really, again, there's that delayed reward system that's helpful too. And really, really important, a schedule. Create a schedule, stick to it, be consistent with it, have that routine, and that's something we can go into, especially if you need some tips for distance learning.
Great. I'm speaking of distance learning, I'm just wondering what you and your organization have seen in relation to attention and structure and routines. How has that changed, if at all, since distance learning came into effect?
Well, I don't know about change, but definitely for many families more challenging. So the issues that families have had didn't go away. They most likely just got exacerbated, or they didn't realize how serious it was until they were the ones having to deal with it all day at home and being the teachers all of a sudden at home. And so I'm seeing a mixed bag. We have some families who really struggle with creating that certain routine, just trying to survive, and we have parents who are also who have ADHD as well, and so it's like that double struggle. So helping them create that routine and expectations has been really important. And then for other kids, it's that motivation, right? We're all of us are just trying to get by right now. So giving the kids some grace too is important. They're not going to be able to sit in front of a screen for all those hours. I can barely do that. I'm constantly getting up and taking breaks myself. But if the kids don't get a chance to do that, or you don't encourage that, or you don't give them flexible seating or ergonomic seating even, that's a struggle. So having parents understand what the setting is like, because now, the kitchen table is not only for meals, it's for a family time and it's for school. And so being able to transform those spaces and mentally prepare your child and yourself is huge.
Great. Yeah. I imagine that have parents, contacted you and said, give me help. My son or daughter is just having trouble attending to the online instruction. It's difficult for them to multitask from one class to another, and on the computer, online at one particular, course maybe, and then logging off and logging back on, and just all of the different organizational skills that are involved, as opposed to being in class and you're sitting there and the teacher comes in and maybe you get up and move to a different classroom. That doesn't take a whole lot of planning, especially if you're used to the routine. But I imagine there's a whole lot more planning going on in distance learning.
Definitely, from the young kids all the way to our teenagers. And we see the whole span, by the way. We see from age 4 to 24. We have the whole span in our center right now. And all of them are struggling with the same challenges. And I feel for the younger students in early elementary, because now they're expected to learn how to use a computer, navigate the different screens, and learn how to type. Typing is something I didn't learn until middle school. And so there's that added challenge. Like, they're still learning to write, and now they're having to type as well. So navigating between the different classes, as well as really assignments for especially our older kids, even though in some classes it may be in their Google Classroom calendar. For another teacher, it might be in a different space, even on one space. It's still multiple things that they have to keep track of, and that's tough. And so one of the things that I really advise parents to do is plan ahead, know your child's schedule, know the daily objectives as well. You have every right to know and ask the teacher ahead of time, what are they learning today, and what should they get out of today? What's the homework? Really laid out. These teachers, and my background's in education, by the way, so I know they're supposed to turn in lesson plans well in advance, right? It's not done day of. So ask for that. If your child can't handle being on the screen, ask for all the written or not the written, but the printed pamphlets or whatnot. Maybe you go pick it up. That is an option too. I don't see why that wouldn't be an option, because truly, if your child is not thriving and learning on the screen, why can't we get these other accommodations and really support each child's learning, right? But it does take work on your part. Even if you're working too, you're going to have to sacrifice time and be flexible to communicate with the teacher. And yes, probably do some teaching yourself. And you have to establish that routine and take those breaks in order to set yourself and set your child up for success. And so the more they know what to expect and feel supported, the better, right?
Okay. I'm just curious, do you ever attend IEP meetings and kind of go over this with the team that, this child has these needs and needs this kind of structure or accommodation or things of that nature?
Yeah, I do quite a few. I've done 2 the last week, actually.
Okay.
So I'm part of parent-teacher conferences or 504 plan meetings or even IEP meetings. Really, whatever your needs are, I just kind of need about 10 or so minutes usually to talk about, and this is assuming the child has already done an assessment with us. So whether or not they're in our program, if they've done an assessment, I'm happy to support, because in the end, we're here to give you answers and support the community. That's what my main mission is here at Brain Balance. So we're able to give you a lot of answers that other people can't. Even more, the school assessments are limited. And so by showing the teachers kind of the whole picture of what's happening, again, the root issue, whether it's sensory processing, especially visual processing, I guarantee you, your child, if you're struggling or if he or she is struggling with attention and focus, probably has some low visual processing in their functioning. So I talk about what does that mean, right? If they're having some sensory processing issue or low core or rhythm and timing challenges, maybe auditory processing is low. I tell them, what does that mean? And what are some things we can do to support them not only in the classroom, but distance learning, and same with the parents too. So I'm happy to put together that document and join your meetings.
Okay. So is the starting point then sort of the assessment process? Is that, I mean, if I just assume a parent is listening to your presentation and says, gosh, that's my child, and they've never heard of you, they've never met you. What's step number 1 once they contact you?
I really love that question. I would say step number 1, assuming you haven't already done this, is adjust some of your lifestyle and daily routine activities. So make sure, again, your nutrition is on point. Make sure your child's getting enough sleep. Make sure they're getting enough exercise, right? And less screen time. Those 4 things alone, if you can make those adjustments, you may see improvement, right? But that's just improvement. It doesn't necessarily resolve the root challenges. So if you feel like you need more help, then coming to us for an assessment, I think, is key, because how do you help your child improve if you don't know exactly what's happening, right? Again, we're not trying to put a Band-Aid on whatever the challenge is, whatever the symptom is. So getting an assessment and understanding kind of the full picture is key. And in our assessment, we look at a few different areas, including primitive reflexes, something everyone is born with for survival, but we know that kids who retain those reflexes after about age toddlerhood, when they're supposed to be extinguished, that it does inhibit their learning and their motor development. So we look at something that most people don't, which makes sense, right? Most people don't have these reflexes anymore once they're older, but we know it affects our kids. So we look at primitive reflexes, we look at various sensory motor skills, We look at all your body awareness score and what we call the proprioception and your vestibular system and how that affects visual processing and balance and empathy and awareness, auditory and visual processing, and bilateral movement as well, which uses activities basically that require both sides of your brain to talk to one another, rhythm and timing, as I mentioned. And all that plays into how your child is doing. And the goal is not to fix anything. There's nothing wrong with your child. Your child just learns differently and is developing a little bit differently. We just want them to be where they're supposed to be so that they can function at their best, right? Optimal functioning, essentially. But you can only do that if you are able to target what's happening.
So once you do the assessment, what's the next step after that?
So first, the assessment takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and it's really hands-on and fun. It's not your typical assessment of, being at a computer or taking a test or answering questions. The kids have a lot of fun. I would say 99% of the kids that come through our program walk away having fun. So that's one thing. I tell parents we're non-clinical, we're non-medical, so that says a lot right there. But once we get through the assessment, I usually meet with the parents about 24 to 48 hours later to go over the full report to help them understand what we're seeing and what our recommendations are, and is the right fit for you for your art. I usually meet with parents about 24 to 48 hours later to go over the report and essentially give our recommendations and help them decide, is this a program they want to enroll in, and get their child help, right? Because there's nobody else quite like us. And so we're able to help quite a few different neurodevelopmental challenges, from dyslexia to defiance to attention and focus, of course, sensory processing challenges. We work with quite a spectrum because most of those issues come down to the connectivity in the brain.
Wow. So that's kind of the foundation for a lot of the struggles or difficulties, is that connectivity. And if you can improve that, it can help different areas.
And I love that you use the word foundation, because that's exactly what I say too. We are not the entire piece of the puzzle, but we're a pretty big piece. We help your child lay the groundwork and the foundation to thrive, right? And so after a program like ours, after just a few months, you see some incredible changes that you couldn't get oftentimes in other programs or other interventions, because those other interventions were limited, right? There's maximum foundation still. So it was either slow or no growth until they got to us. So we lay the foundation, and if they need more help after us, then it's much more likely to be successful. And we see that regularly every day.
Great. Let me ask you, you obviously then, after you do the assessment and you create the program, what can be done in the school setting to help either accommodate or remediate the problems or difficulties or struggles that you identify in your assessment?
So it goes back to the meetings that I have with the schools, right? So whether it's just a chat between the teacher, myself, and the parent, and talking about helping them understand, right? Empathy is one of the biggest things. And one of the things I love most about our assessment is helping parents empathize with their child, right? A lot of times you'll hear them wonder, are they just doing this on purpose? For defiance, especially, we have parents wondering, are they purposely being belligerent or ignoring me, or try harder? These kids often have been called lazy by many others in their life, right? So is that really true? The answer generally is not really. They're just not there, right? So I help parents and I help teachers empathize what's going on, and then make those changes, right? If your child has services already, particularly with IEPs, they do. I usually confer with the occupational therapist or speech therapist or the school psychologist, and we work together. I believe it's essential for us to work as a team. We have to be team, whatever the student's name is. We have to be on the same page and support one another and make sure that we're all working towards the same goal, and that everyone's not just kind of pulling their own strings, right? That's what we like to say. And that's kind of what's unique about Brain Balance too, is that we're kind of a one-stop shop, and we help foster those relationships and be that liaison. And I'm not telling anybody what to do. So that's important to note too. I'm not telling anyone, this is what I see, this is what you should do. These are just my recommendations. And what are you doing? Because there are other experts in the community, that I want to learn from and I want to support too. If you're teaching, so we have some kids, for instance, who are in OT for learning how to tie their shoes. That's not a direct thing we work on here, but I can easily support that when they come in and leave the center every time they take their shoes off, put them back on or whatnot, right? So how do we, again, we create those multiple touch points to make it the strongest support system for that child?
Great. One of the next topics I know you wanted to cover was brain breaks. Could you explain what brain breaks are?
Yeah, it is so essential more than right now with distance learning to take these moments to reset the brain to help them improve focus and get that blood flow going, like I said, and promote brain balance. So I mentioned that earlier in the presentation. But brain breaks are needed to again ground you, right, and help you be productive. The key though is to take them before you're tired or before your child is tired, distracted, or lack of focus sets in. That's where I think parents struggle. When do you take those breaks? How long they're supposed to be, and what are your options? And for kind of a ballpark guidance is if your child's in grade school, it should probably be about every 10 to 15 minutes. And if they're in middle or high school, it should be every about 20 to 30 minutes. It's kind of the research. However, for some parents, they might see that like, whoa, that's a lot. But remember that brain breaks are meant to be short. A lot of times parents think breaks need to be 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes long. That's not true. They should be 1, 3, 5-minute breaks. That's what I do. I literally take like a 1-minute stretch break or, just to stand up and then refocus. And that helps a lot, right? Think about just your in the chair stretch break. That takes 30 seconds. That helps a lot. So brain breaks are essential to, again, reset the brain and reset focus and increase productivity. And they need to be short. So some tips though, or not tips, some suggestions of activities, know that they can be active or quiet and relaxing too. It's not always run around, right? Depends on what your child needs. One of the more quieter activities, I like to call it mindful minute. I know a lot of school districts are doing such a thing as well, but literally spend 1 minute doing some breathing exercises and recentering yourself, whether you're focusing on your breath, maybe use a sound bowl if you have one of those and you're listening to that entire ring until it's gone. Something called tap into your senses. So I do this sometimes when I get a little anxious is I think about all my senses and, what are 5 things I see? What are 4 things I can touch? What are 3 things I smell, etc. And hopefully you'll get the slides too. You can click on some of those hyperlinks and learn what some of those different breathing techniques and options are. Stretching is really important, and you can do that in an open space or in your chair. There's plenty of chair stretches that you can do. And I really like Yoga Ed. I follow them, and they've set quite a few digital wellness breaks as well with video. So you can see that in those links if you get the opportunity. Something that we do in center that helps with fine motor skill is piano fingers. So you tap. Can you see my fingers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So you tap your thumb to each finger and back 25 times per hand. Your kids may initially struggle because this takes some coordination and, again, fine motor skills, but eventually you'll see them go pretty quickly. And so this is a quick, simple activity. For the creative kiddos, they can take a doodle break, get blank piece of paper, any writing utensil, maybe play some soft music and just doodle away. There's no structure to it, right? Let them flow, right? That's important. Something else that's active but quiet is mirror. This works really great for stimulating the brain. Is if you stand up or have the kids or your siblings play with each other, you basically want to copy and mirror what the other person is doing. So one person's the mover, one person's the mirror. So if I'm moving my right hand to the right, you're probably moving your left hand to the right, right? So copying each other's movements is really fun. And what really works the brain, if you want to make it more challenging, is if you do the opposite of what you're saying.
Oh.
Yeah, opposites always stimulate the brain. So those are some of the quieter, more calmer activities. But if you need something more active, if that's what your child needs, all right, go for it. Jumping jacks are huge. However, that's a good little test to see how well your child's brain is balanced too. Jumping jacks seem like such a childhood easy thing to do, but it's not. I really try to avoid the term easy for anything, because what is when you can't do it, right? Jumping jacks require both hemispheres of the brain to coordinate, not only upper body but lower body, and just out and open. There's a lot of components to jumping jacks. So see if your child can do a jumping jack correctly, right? Everything out together, everything in together. And if they can do it, the next step is to see, can they sustain it? Because some kids can do it, but they can't sustain it very well. So try to see if you can do 20 in a row or more, or with your eyes closed. When your eyes are closed, that stimulates a different part of the brain too. And so balance is huge for brain balance. So try those jumping jacks, sit-ups and push-ups. Something called cross crawls I really love, and we do in center as well, where you slap your one hand to the opposite knee, you bring it up like you're marching, you slap back and forth. So same deal, like jumping jacks, takes a lot of coordination. See if they can do it, and more importantly, can they sustain it? Okay. I talked about balance already, so just literally having them balance on one leg for 30 to 60 seconds on an uneven surface to make it more challenging, and then closing their eyes even. That's a really good activity for brain balance. And dancing, clapping beats, there's plenty that you can find online as well.
So all these activities kind of assist that brain activity, I take it. I mean, they're working on, the neurons going back and forth.
Yes, exactly. And so
they're supposed to go.
Yeah, I try to take intentional brain breaks. It's not just to take a break. Just taking a break, yeah, it's helpful, but intentional brain breaks are essential. And the brain breaks I just mentioned help with the different brain connectivity and development as well for learning and for your child.
And I could imagine, with distance learning, they're even more important, because I think probably what's happening is, the child's at the computer, and maybe the parent's busy, and the child's just sitting there, half hour goes by, another half hour goes by, and you wonder.
And they might be taking their own brain breaks, just so you know,
right.
and not appropriate.
And how much, are they really attending on those long stretches?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably something that, could be done from the teacher's end. Okay, everybody.
Yeah, a lot of them.
We're going to take a break now. I want you to, whatever suggestions maybe that you made, do something like that with the entire class, especially with the younger kids.
And I help teachers with that too. Yep, I help with teachers with that as well. Pre-COVID, I used to do teacher training. So if you know any teachers or schools or organizations that are interested in a little bit of a talk to, again, get a better understanding of brain balance and what they can do about it. Excuse me. I'm happy to go over that. But yes, teachers need help too. They get a lot of training. I've been through a teacher training program, but you can only remember and learn so much. So I definitely help teachers with that. And earlier I said that it sparked a reminder, make sure your child takes appropriate breaks, right? Even if you're not saying like, okay, do these cross crawls, they should not be going on YouTube. They should not be watching TV as a break just because they're at home. Their breaks should simulate what they would have been doing in school, right? So if they're going to be normally running around at the recess and playing on the playground, let them run around in the backyard, and be safe, of course. And also, it's a time for them to socialize. So there is some comments there, right? Let them text or chat or whatever with their friends like they would, even though because the only way right now is through the screen, right? But make sure they get that exercise and movement per usual. And this is for younger kids and older kids, right? They should not be playing video games.
Right. Great. Okay. Well, I think our last topic is about motivation. I assume motivation plays a pretty important part in all this. So how do you motivate your child? I mean, let's just assume they're not motivated, to watch, the teacher's presentation or do things
follow through that homework,
especially in distance learning. So how do you bridge that gap?
And that goes across the span, like you said. It's not just at school, following up with chores, behaving. And that is another big topic we hear at Brain Balance as well. And although I would need to learn more to be able to address it, there are some basics to keep in mind for helping to motivate your child. And I do want to say most children are motivated by something. There is the rare exception, and we've seen it. And again, this is our expertise too, is There's some kids who really seem to care about anything, but we get to them and we're able to help usually, right? That even the most difficult child. But most kids aren't on that level, and most kids you can find what their interests are to get them excited. So some basic things to think about when your child is not being motivated is what we call the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's basically their basic needs being taken care of. Are they physically comfortable? Do they have to use the restroom? Are they hungry? Are they emotionally content or safe? Is their mental health in check, or are they anxious, right? If that's not in check, then motivation might not be there, right? Like, why would they care about turning in an assignment if they're worried about a grandparent, right? So think about, oftentimes kids don't see the bigger picture or find the purpose and why they have to do what they have to do. So helping them understand that too is key, and not just because I said so, right? Helping them understand that, and not to say that every kid can't be or can be reasoned with either, because again, that takes another cognitive skill, but you should try, right? You should still try to teach them and model that kind of conversation and behavior. The next question is, do they have the skills to do what you want them to do, right? Do they have the executive functioning skills like planning and prioritizing? If they don't have the skills, they're not likely to be motivated. It's much easier just to ignore it and forget about it than attempt something that's difficult, or they literally don't even know where to start, okay? So guiding them through that, right? Remember, these are kids. They're in school for a reason. They're still learning. All of us, even when we get out of school, we're still learning. So we all need a mentorship. So think about that. And then lastly, is what you're trying to motivate them with the thing that actually motivates them, right? So you might think it's more screen time, for instance, which for most kids it probably is. But is that actually true? Or do they really want to do something else instead, or have something else? Something to also keep in mind, though, are intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. More often, you want to support them with intrinsic motivation, the feel good, the verbal praise. That is very, very important. That positive reinforcement is, in the long run, research shows much more successful than materialistic, like toy, for instance, or that extrinsic motivation. But it takes a balance. So you need to think about what gets them excited, and then have them actually towards it, right? And the growth mindset too. Sometimes kids, they're not motivated because they don't feel like they are successful. A lot of the kids that we see have very low confidence, and that breaks my heart the most. And I would say is one of the best things that come out of Brain Balance is, boy, do they shine when they leave here after a few months. They feel good physically, right? Because they're exercising and they're getting the brain connectivity going to help them be successful. They see that every time they're in session. That translates out in school, translates at home with their family and friends. And so knowing that you can't be perfect, and that failure is important, and that you are capable is huge in order to get them to the next step.
Well, this has been great, Amanda. I just wanted to conclude with maybe if you could share for the community a success story, some situation where maybe a child came into your center with certain struggles, and you guys were able to help them.
Yeah, I'll share one story of a preteen who had a lot of different struggles. I think she's the most comprehensive, one of the most comprehensive I can share. So she came into the center with a lot of sensory processing challenges, mood disorder. Honestly, family was in quote unquote crisis mode, and that's what mom says. And you can see that review testimonial on our different platforms as well. But basically, she would evacuate the classroom. She didn't do well in school. Reading was very difficult. She definitely couldn't focus. The social skills were off. The hygiene was off. There's just so many different challenges. And mom and her family were champions. I admire them so much. It's not that for lack of effort. And when they came to Brain Balance within a few months, what a difference. She went from, again, a child who was locked in her room and was one of those actually that really didn't seem to be motivated by anything. She can lay in an empty, dark room by herself and be fine, to now brushing her hair, being able to wear shoes and socks, right? She's one of those parents where they had to spend so much money on shoes, is getting A's and B's in school right now when she was failing all her life. She's a 7th grade right now, and she was in a program last year. So that was huge. She's actually loving to read. By the end of our program, Hunger Games became her favorite book. And this is someone who really did not enjoy or really could read very well. And just all around a happy dynamic. She was also one of those girls who couldn't look at a camera when they took pictures. And so last December was one of the first times they've had a picture of the whole family with everyone looking, and vacation. I mean, they couldn't take family vacations. She was an eloper. She, again, had a mood disorder, and just a lot of things were challenging for this individual. So that was not in the cards at all. And she was able to go on her first field trip at school without her mom chaperoning. They were able to take a field trip. She's actually active. Oh, she learned to ride a bike this summer, which I love. Bike riding is one of my favorite activities. And that's something a lot of our kids can't do either. Remember, again, that coordination and balance and proprioception. But she learned to ride a bike, and she's just beaming and smiling. And this is a child that didn't smile very often most of her life. And so to see these amazing changes because we're able to get to the root of what's going on and send her onward. Again, not like she's a perfect child now, but man, that stress level is significantly less. They're not in crisis mode anymore. When those parents first came into our assessment, I asked them, when was the last time you had a good day? They couldn't remember. And if that's you, please call us. That breaks my heart. Again, we have answers for you, and we have solutions most likely for you as well. And if we're not the right fit, I'll send you out to the right folks. But for the most part, I could probably get you some answers and get you that hope, and hopefully have that future and the goals that you want for your child and for your family. That's so important to us.
Wonderful story.
Yeah, great. And so I just want to also say, even if your situation is not this extreme case, maybe it seems mild, remember there's a snowball effect. And if we don't take care of these challenges now, we don't want it worse, basically, as the years go by and they develop negative coping strategies or strategies that are not are counterproductive, basically, right? So I like to call our program a positive snowball effect, where if we are able to make one positive change in the brain, that connectivity, that relationship or whatnot, we're going to see in other areas of their lives. So no matter where your child is on the spectrum and where you need help, please contact us if this seems like the right fit. But I love and appreciate My Special Needs Connection for sharing so many great resources with the community and giving me the opportunity to share some of my expertise with you as well. All right, so if you'd like to get in touch with us, please visit our website, brainbalancesandiego.com. We are in Carmel Mountain, right off the 56 and Ted Williams Parkway and Rancho Carmel Drive. So we're right off the freeway. We're able to help you if you give us a call or text as well, whichever is easiest for you. So check out our website and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you, Amanda. That was a great presentation. I think the community really benefited from that. I got a lot of good information. I learned a lot personally. So thank you for taking the time to be with us and share your expertise. So I want to thank everybody who was tuned in to listen. Just stay safe. Hope you and your family stay safe throughout this challenging time. But there are services out there that can help and relieve some of the stress and help your children, progress in their education as they should. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you, Amanda, for being with us today. Bye now.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.